Morning, everybody. Welcome to our skills procurement market engagement event. It's the third one of these we've done, and a couple face-to-face and just putting on a final one online today. So just going to run through our forthcoming skills procurement with you. Obviously no housekeeping, you can do that yourselves from wherever you're stationed from this morning. I suppose the only housekeeping to note is if anyone's got any questions as we go along, please pop them in the chat as we go along. We'll try and respond as we're going, or we'll come to them at the end, and then will be a bit of time for open Q&A. So whatever works for you on that one. So I'm just going to run through a little bit on the overview of the skills, and then we're going to take you through our approach to market and what we're hoping to do with the dynamic purchasing system this time round. So thanks, Bally. So just a little bit about us in the West Midlands for anybody that's not from this area or currently working in the area. That great place to be, great place to live and to work, and that we're seeing some really positive economic signs. Employment rate is like the rest of the country, has recovered from pre-pandemic levels, has increased significantly. Unemployment rates are dropping and returning to pre-pandemic levels, but we're still a little bit above the UK in that, though we are seeing high levels of inactivity in our region. But within all of that, I guess the big thing for us is it masks some really serious inequalities. So although the overall picture at the headline measures looks good and looks promising and looks positive, we still have far too many of our residents that are not able to access the economic prosperity that the region is seeing. We still have far fewer percentage of people in our region with level 3 qualifications, for example, than the rest of the UK. And kind of why does that matter? Well, when we look at the jobs that are on offer and available in the region, the good jobs that a bit of feedback. If I can ask you to turn your mics off if you're not speaking, that would be really helpful. So yeah, lots of people without level 3 qualifications, which is where we know more of the jobs are going to be, and that's only going to increase with more jobs in the region predicted to need qualifications at level 4. So a real imperative for us to make sure our residents can get those higher level qualifications. And still too many of our residents without any qualifications, still too many residents with claiming benefits, unequal access to the labour market. And that's particularly strong for some groups, some particular BAME groups and some particular geographies across our region. And that's where we see skills playing a real part in helping us to equalise some of the access to the opportunities in the region. Thanks, Bally. That's probably a bit of a summary of what I've just said, that despite employment rates at a high, unemployment at a low, we have got some real challenges still in the region that skills can address. Next one, please, Bally. I think COVID hit us quite hard. I think we have bounced back in a way that probably lots of the economic projections didn't originally say would happen. I think we thought there'd be a lot more long-term scarring of youth unemployment than there happens to be. But what we're actually seeing in our labour market now is quite a buoyant labour market, a lot of jobs, a lot of unfilled vacancies, more vacancies than there are unemployed people. But like I've already alluded to, some real pockets of high unemployment and some stubborn levels of long-term unemployment. But some other things that we're seeing is we're really seeing health inequalities growing across the region, life expectancy dropping, and quite a variation in life expectancy between some areas in the south where it's much higher in Solihull, Coventry, and much lower in areas of the Black Country, and inactivity growing. And also for those people who are working, increasing in work poverty. So we will talk a little bit more later about the need to be able to upskill people who are currently working as well to level 2 and to level 3 and beyond qualifications as well, to help them be able to access some of the jobs available in the labour market. Move on, Bally. So we have got some real high growth clusters in our area. We are really keen to make sure that we, through our skills procurement, secure a provision that links to some of these sectors. always in the West Midlands have been, manufacturing of vehicles, so the automotive industry, but the switch to electric and light vehicles and battery storage devices, etc., with gigafactories on the horizon. What are the skills that people need? And that will apply equally to those people in current jobs as well as those people looking to access new jobs as well. Health tech and med tech, so you will see through a lot of this a strong a theme of digital, but those appearing in different sectors. And again, we haven't got a massive amount of training provision currently in health tech and med tech. Lots of health and social care, lots of care worker provision for people moving into those type of roles, but not enough provision at the moment in some of those health tech and med tech sectors. Aerospace manufacturing continues to be a high growth sector for us in the region. Logistics and distribution, again, we've got lots of training provision currently in warehousing, but it's the new style of warehousing as well. It's lots of, again, tech. Sorry, that is my phone ringing. I'm not turning that off. Again, lots of tech, lots of automation in those industries, lots of planning, project management, comms type roles as well. So sometimes it's just looking at the breadth of roles in those growing industries where we want to be able to secure more training provision. Professional financial services continues to grow, particularly in the city centres across the region. Creative content and gaming, particularly over in Warwickshire, but lots more around not just digital marketing, content creation for a whole range of products. Manufacture future housings as we move from construction in some of the old style to the off-site construction, the modern methods of construction and pre-designed builds, and looking at how we move to more low carbon and modern utility delivery across the region. Thanks, Bally. But saying all that, we've still got some sectors with really large volumes of jobs and vacancies for us in the region. Engineering, manufacturing and construction continue to need new recruits to coming into their sectors to fill the jobs. Health, across the whole of the spectrum of health, so many vacancies in health disciplines across the region. Business admin and professional services and retail, not just shop retail, the whole range of retail. Again, lots of tech, lots of customer service, call centre type opportunities as well in those sectors. So wanting to make sure we've got really good training that can help move people into accessing jobs where there are great volumes of jobs and where there are growth sectors as well. Thanks, Bally. So I think I've probably covered this, but to summarise, alignment to the opportunities in the region is really key. I think we're looking for more variation in our provision, some new areas, maybe moving away not from just doing the traditional routes and branching out, using the health example, not just health and social care for care homes, but the wider disciplines across health and all the jobs that are there. And I need to be really ambitious for our residents. We still spend an enormous amount of our budget on basic skills, which is only right and proper where people haven't got qualifications, but wanting to look at how we package that better, how we can support people to accelerate their learning, to get to that level 2, to get vocational learning as well, with English, maths or language alongside that, rather than always as a precursor, which has traditionally been the way of delivery. So wanting to make sure we can really support residents to gain access to employment and to move on in their learning, and making sure we deliver the qualifications and training that businesses need, so that when they're looking to recruit, people have the skills that they're looking for. Thanks, Bally. So I'm going to hand over to Iris to talk you through the packages in a little bit more detail.
Hi everyone, I'm Iris Bot, Senior Manager Adult Education at the Combined Authority, and I will take you through some of the packages we're really interested in buying for our residents or businesses in the region. First of all, really looking at packages, and that's overarching, which deliver outcomes into jobs, progressions into further and higher education, but really provision which helps people progress from where they currently are into better paid jobs, into a job or into further education. Getting residents into employment is still one of our focus areas. We've seen a lot of provision around swaps, vocational provision as well throughout different levels, helping with this, but there's still more which we want to see here in a wider spread of sectors as well. Thirdly, really looking at upskilling and reskilling residents to respond to the regional economy. So we have been testing in the first year, but expanding our offer on level 2, level 3, and even level 4, 5 in some areas significantly over the past few years, really to align to employer needs, align to the regional economy needs as well, but really making sure that residents can upskill and reskill to or progress into better paid jobs, different jobs, more technical jobs, but also changing into different sectors as well. On the base of that, of course, what we want to see is really good basic education offer up to level 2. That includes numeracy provision, that includes language provision, of course, as well. As Claire mentioned before, not per se as a standalone, but really incorporated in some of those vocational elements, and making sure that we see really clear vocational pathways as well on level 1, level 2, to move into those higher levels as well. Then community-based training. So we did talk about that we have seen growth and recovery in the West Midlands. However, there are groups of residents and of certain geographies which are not benefiting from that growth as much as others. And we really want to make sure that we work together with different sectors, with different kind of organizations to create a really good community-based training offer, which engages those disadvantaged communities, and really helps them get engaged, progress into further education, progress into jobs, but really we're looking for a slightly different and more innovative offer there as well. Also, we want to see some more innovative skills provision, which might tie in with some of the other elements I talked about before, but really linked to some of the growth sectors Claire mentioned before. There are a lot of sectors which are really high growth for our region, which we won't have that much provision in currently, but we are looking to grow. Indeed, like medtech, health tech, some of the aerospace, EV, etc. And of course, a wider general skills provision offer, which might go slightly wider than those packages I mentioned before. Next slide, please, Vali. Just want to go in depth a bit more on 4 of these packages. So really focus on getting residents into employment. So talking about training provision, which helps residents move into employment, but really also meet employer needs, the needs of businesses for the skills they require. That can include some of the traditional swap programs, but also a wider training, which can be accessed around work. So a really good offer for those who are in work and might be looking to progress. We're looking for this to be mainly at level 2. It would need to include vocationally relevant qualifications and possibly some additional wraparound support as well, including functional skills, language, digital, and some other elements wherever personal support, mentoring, coaching might be needed as well. Belly, next slide, please. Then when we're looking at an offer to upskill and reskill our residents, really looking at an offer which shows progression pathways throughout level 2, 3, and in some cases level 4, but really showing clear progressions for residents, whether they are looking to progress into a job or where they are already in a job and looking to progress in their career in the same or in a different sector. This provision will really need to be able to respond to the needs of the different sets of residents as well. So it needs to be flexible, available in days, evening, weekends, but also condensed full time to apply to those who are or in work or those who are looking for work. And a blend of online and face-to-face delivery would support that as well. And really, when we're looking at a better offer for those who are already in employment, I think this is where we really want to see some more innovative provision with regards to what does this look like? Can we include mentoring? Can we include coaching? What kind of support do these people need to be able to have training alongside the work they're already doing and the other responsibilities they might have, which will still allow them to progress and complete that. Belly, next slide, please. And then, as I said before, really on the base of this is having a really good basic education offer up to level 2. And that means that we are really looking here at a good basic offer, which is able to progress residents to a vocational level 2, very clear pathways and very clear progressions and very clear links to jobs in the different sectors as well. But next to that as well, we're looking at language and numeracy provision as well. Specifically, multiply provision is something we will also be procuring, which is a wider numeracy provision complementing the already existing maths provision we currently have. Again, with regards to basic education offer, it needs to be flexible. It needs to apply to what resident needs as well with regards to their timings of basically being part of learning and skills and training. And again, it really needs to show those progressions for residents into a better paid job, into a job, or to upskill and reskill their current skill set. Belly, next slide, please. And then a community-based training offer. Again, really an offer which engages those underserved communities, those communities we haven't been able to reach that well, and those hardest hit by COVID. Again, looking at a wide range of organizations who can deliver this, but provision should be ambitious. It should be innovative. It shouldn't always be entry level. It just should be delivered differently to the needs of what these residents actually need to be able to be engaged in training, to progress into jobs, education, etc. So provision should include a mix of qualifications and personal support to support them into progressing. Thank you, Belly. Next slide, and I think I will be handing over to Josie Medford, who will be taking us through our approach to market.
Hi, lovely to talk to you this morning. I'm here to provide the procurement support, so I wanted to talk through our approach to the market and the procurement route we're taking and why, and then with associated timescales and next steps. So when approaching the market this time, we wanted to look at things differently. So we know that obviously the grant funding aspect provides the foundation for delivery, but obviously it's really important that additional provision is secured, and this needs to be through a competitive procurement exercise, through a call for competition. But we wanted to deploy the skills procurement wider, thinking about all the different funding streams that are coming in, and come up with an approach for you. So next slide. So with that in mind, what we wanted to do was consider procurement in a different way this time. As you're aware, when the funding is received, it comes with conditions attached in terms of timescales, usually have a set time frame for delivering the outcomes. So we've been very reactional in the past. So funding comes in, we need to go through a procurement process. That's usually an open process, but that can be quite time consuming in preparing for it and undertaking it. So then what can happen is we're trying to deliver within a shorter time frame. So we're not enabling you as the delivery partners to have the best possible opportunity to deliver the outcomes we need, we feel. So rather than being reactional every time funding comes in, we want to strategise how we could streamline the procurement to make it easier for all of us, but also still needing to remain compliant. So what we really want is maximum flexibility and to be able to future-proof so that we've got a process that will enable us to deliver more efficiently and effectively in the future when a new funding stream may come in the future. So with that in mind, if we could look at the next slide, what we're aiming to do this time is to set up a dynamic purchasing system. So what this is, it's a procurement tool. It will enable you to qualify, and then once you're qualified on it, every time there is a package of work that Iris and her team want to deliver, they can use this method to do the call-offs. So what we're saying here is this will then enable us to be more flexible. It's like a framework, but it's more flexible because suppliers can apply any time. And also we can, once we've set up the dynamic purchasing system, it's there for up to the next 10 years. It's a bit like a pre-approved supplier list. So moving on to the next slide. So why has the DPS been selected? I think there's benefits here for suppliers, yourselves as the delivery partners, but also for the skills provision teams within WMCA. This is because once you've qualified onto and been awarded a place onto the DPS, you don't have to then demonstrate your suitability and capacity every time. You've already shown that you're a suitable supplier to work with WMCA. So the approval process is then quicker and easier each time we go out to market. We feel that this route to market should support SMEs and new startups better. And like we say, what's really important is that it future-proofs the process. For WMCA, we feel it will encourage competition because it's easier for you to join the DPS and compete with suppliers. It ensures compliance. And what's really great is there's no limit on the number of suppliers that are on the DPS, and people can apply throughout the lifetime. So move on to the next slide. So there are 2 stages within the DPS. It's like a framework. The first stage is that we need to go through is how to join. So how are you going to get onto the dynamic purchasing system? So the first stage is the government mandatory selection questionnaire. It's a pass-fail process. You should find it straightforward, hopefully. As we've said, there's no limit to the number of suppliers that can apply. If you're not successful on the first round for any reason, you can reapply again. So that's a positive aspect. It might be that your financials aren't quite there or something else, but then you can go away and look at that and then reapply later. Any supplier that is excluded, we do give feedback, so it enables you to look at the areas that you need to go away and improve upon so that you can reapply again. We don't provide feedback to suppliers that are successful, and that's purely because it's a pass-fail process. So there isn't anything that you would need to get feedback on to improve anything that would enable you at the next stage to be more successful. So in terms of the first stage, if it's the next slide for me, Bally, thank you. So in terms of what will be contained within that selection questionnaire, you've got the standard mandatory and discretionary exclusions that you have in the government questionnaire that you'll be used to. In terms of the financials, there will be a requirement that we'll undertake a credit check. That's through Credit Safe. And what there will be in the instructions is if you meet the minimum score of 30 and above, then at this point you will be successful on the financial. If your score is below 30, then we will reserve the right to undertake a further financial assessment. So as part of your application, you will be asked to provide 2 years worth of audited accounts and fill out a financial questionnaire as part of it. And that information will only be used if you score below the 30. And then that will be undertaken a financial assessment by the finance team, and that will be assessed whether you will be suitable to be on the DPS. If you aren't successful at that stage, you can reapply at a later time if you think your credit score over a period of time then has improved. In terms of insurance, it's the standard approach, the 5 million employer, the public liability that's suitable for your organisation, and just 1 million of professional indemnity. And then within the professional technical ability, it's the standard approach of certain policies like GDPR policy. There'll be a question around living wage, the usual standard of approach there. And we do ask for one contract example of where you've received grant money. We're not saying it has to be from the SFA, but where you've received grant money to deliver some training, because then that ensures that you have that understanding around grant conditions and the risks around it. You know, that if either yourself or WMCA don't meet those grant conditions, then clawback can happen, and that can be a risk to the organisation. So that's why we do require one contract example. So should be straightforward. It's a pass-fail stage, so you should find it quite simple to follow, and that will enable everybody that passes everything there will be admitted to the DPS. So if we could move on to the next slide. So once we've gone through that process and the DPS is live, the next stage is where there'll be packages of work where we'll run through, and it's called a call for competition process. We're hoping then that each time that process will be a lot more streamlined rather than having to go through a 6-month open stage process procurement exercise. So this is where the flexibility and the streamlined approach comes in. So there'll be individual packages of work. Under this DPS, we're not going to have categories where you need to apply for set categories. It will be everybody that is on the DPS will be invited to the call for competition. Under the rules of the DPS, there aren't any direct awards. That process isn't available within this. We don't see that as a problem because we think it's important to have that competition element. The further competition will be evaluated, as we say, on the most economically advantageous tender. So there'll be a financial pricing element as well as quality questions. Where there are more complex requirements, we do reserve the right to do an expression of interest stage where we would need to sift applications before the full tender process is released. But that is only reserving the right. That doesn't necessarily mean that that will happen for every package of work. As you could imagine, in order to be awarded onto the DPS, you're there for the full 10 years. So therefore, WMCA do reserve the right to undertake a further financial assessment should you be selected as a successful supplier to provide that package of work. And that's just to ensure the financials are still in a positive position before the award is finalised. Next slide. So just there, the general types of provision, types of packages of work that could be let from the DPS. If we move on to the next slide. So in terms of the second stage, as you can imagine, it is about needing that capacity, capability and strategy in place to deliver the offer from day one, and that would need to be demonstrated. We do need you to confirm that you can comply with the funding rules and the performance management framework and the supply chain rules. You will need, and this will be at the call-off stage, the appropriate accreditations, approvals and authorities to deliver that service. So that will be checked at the second stage, and that you do have the capacity and capability for the data and evidence collection, management and reporting. So all of those things there will be checked as part of the second stage process. So in terms of process and timelines, the Bravo tendering portal is what's going to be used to run the initial stage and the further call-offs. I'm sure a lot of you are used to this system, but if not, if you could, you'll have a copy of these slides. If you could go onto that portal and get yourselves registered as soon as possible, so then you can be notified once the process is released. It's quite a straightforward registration process. So as we said, within the start of July, we are aiming to publish the contract notice and then the resultant tender for the first stage of applying for a place onto the DPS. We are looking for the submission date to be mid-August, start to mid-August. Then there'll be the process then of running through the evaluations. That can take some time. So by the start of November, we are aiming to notify the outcome. If we can do that within October, we will aim to do so, but just managing expectations, we're hoping for a lot of applications from you. So that can take time to go through. But as soon as everybody has been evaluated and we've gone through the appropriate approval processes on the WMCA side, we will notify everybody of the outcome. And then as soon as it's live, we will be prepared and running through the first packages of work within that stage, knowing that really by January, we want to be awarding the first stages of packages of work ready for February. So that's the outline of the timeline that we're aiming to work towards. So, and what we also wanted to make you aware of is while we are looking at the DPS to be the route to market for 99% of all skills provision funding that comes through where it's not grant funded, due to timescales, we are looking to go out as a separate open process for the boot camps. That's because there is this money that needs to be procured, that the DPS is going to go live too late, because obviously we appreciate that learners need to be enrolled before March. So if we didn't release this until November, we don't think that that gives you the appropriate amount of time to get through the process and get all those learners onboarded. So we will need to do a separate open process. We are looking to release that early in September, so that it all can be awarded. So you could start mobilisation December to enable all the enrolments, hopefully before March 2023. So it's digital, as you can see, retrofit and healthcare. Okay, so we will keep that communication up with you for when that goes live. Again, the Bravo tendering portal will be used for this, and a contract notice will be released through Find a Tender service. So, has anybody got any questions on the procurement process and on the wider presentation today? You can use the chat or come off mute and ask questions directly. I don't know if you want to use the hand up approach just so that Valley can manage that. All quiet. I appreciate people don't like to ask questions so much online, do they, as in an open forum?
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for your time today. We just have a brief question to do with proof of previous handling of contracts. We've begun this as a new startup, but we have history in another company dealing with this sort of thing. It's essentially been a rebrand. Does that carry any weight in proving previous experience in grant funding if it was through another company?
I'm really sorry, we can't hear you on that question. Sorry, there's some interference. Do you want to have a try again?
It sounded like they had previous contract experience with a company with a previous name, and now they've rebranded. So would they be able to use that contract example for approval?
Depends. It depends really. Is it a rebrand? Is it a takeover? Is it the same company? Is it a merger? Yeah, hard to. Oh, hold on, it's coming in the chat.
It's a separate company.
Karen, bootcamp funding will be run outside of the DPS. The DPS will be for moving forward after that, but you won't need to be on the DPS to go for this round of bootcamp funding. So if it's a different company, you can't use the track record of a different company unless it's part of a group structure. I think it'd be really hard. Otherwise, that's like me saying I worked for this company, and when we were there, we had this, and we went somewhere else now. So I think, yeah. Credit checks, Josie, can you answer that one?
I think I'd have to take that back to the finance team to understand when they do a credit check, if that impacts on credit rating. If we could take that back to the finance team and provide an answer.
Ian, not accreditations per se, usual things, safeguarding policies, etc., will be a commitment to work towards matrix for anybody that hasn't got it. If they gain a contract, but it won't be a prerequisite of getting on a DPS. No, apprenticeship contracts would be a good example, James, of previous delivery. So yeah, it doesn't have to be grant funded. Apprenticeships would work well. Okay, anything else from? Oh, here we go. Karen, yes, I mean, whole range of different groups and residents with disabilities also suffer a number of inequalities in the labour market. So yes, the list we did wasn't you know, totally exhaustive. There will be a range of things, and it'll probably be more phrased around you know, groups experiencing different disadvantage in the labour market than being prescriptive about X, Y, or Z.
Are there any more questions? One from Sam Hislop. Financial checks for new companies and SMEs if they do have 2 financial accounts. Is this one, Josie, that we have to take back?
Yes, we'll take that back to check.